Let's see. There we go. All right. All right, so this is the second session of 8 of creating a culture for spiritual growth, and the title of this one is that bhakti is both internal and external. And you'll notice that I have magnified, put bold the internal part, because the premise is that I think we focus disproportionately. Both are certainly important, but I think we focus disproportionately on the external, somewhat to the neglect of the internal. I guess that's the thesis I'm going to have here. I mean, I think I'm not just self-diagnosing here. I think I'm probably more typical than atypical of devotees. So that's what I'm thinking. And this both internal and external part, I think, comes right in from Srila Prabhupada's definition. Well, usually Prabhupada translates bhakti as devotional service. And so there's two parts, devotional and service there. And I'm going to say that the devotional part is an internal, or the service part, the actual actions, are external. Okay? And then I think that's kind of shown by the famous Bhagavad Gita verse as well, Bhagavad Gita 9:26. Right? If one offers me with love, again, all the little bold things are going to come from me. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. And so the offering, the act of offering, that's external. It's done with the body, or I mean, you can sometimes do things mentally as well. And then devotion, with love and devotion, that's an internal part. It's a feeling that we have, or something that's coming from the internal part. It's not just a physical thing. And the fact is, in Rupa Goswami's verse that defines bhakti for our tradition, it comes from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. If you look at his verse, these two components are built right in where he defines bhakti. So it's not something that's surprising at all to say this. And so here's his verse. It comes from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In Rupa Goswami, he was Lord Chaitanya. He only left, as far as written work, was the Shikshastakam. But what Prabhupada says is he personally instructed Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami over several days each, and he gave them the seeds that they needed to produce, Prabhupada says, volumes of literature that presented Lord Chaitanya's teachings and philosophy. And so the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu was one of those. And in that, this is a verse of his composition. And it's quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 19, text 167. It's Anya Bilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Jnanavritam Anukulyena Krishanu Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. So this is a definition of the best bhakti, the Uttama Bhakti. And the Prabhupada's translation of that is when first class, Prabhupada calls it first class Uttama Bhakti, devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy, and fruit of action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. So that's how Prabhupada translates that verse. And so the two parts of the devotion, which is internal, and the service, which is external, is here. This is coming from the word for word translations. Prabhupada has the verse and he has the word by word translations, and then the translation which we already read. So anukulyena means favorable, and Krishna Anushilanam is cultivation of service and relationship to Krishna. So there's Anushilanam, or these actions or service, and directed towards Krishna. So the Krishna delineates that it's service directed towards Krishna favorably. Is how Prabhupada translates it. And for the most part, and that's actually because if you see the Anukulyena, it's really an adverb here. It modifies the service. And so, like when Prabhupada says it's the service is favorable to Krishna, or pleasing him, that's kind of the most apparent meaning, direct translation of that. One of our great acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's written commentaries on most of our literatures, and Prabhupada uses him in his purports a lot. He looks at it a little more carefully, and he says that it's more precise to say that anukulyena is a favorable attitude, rather than like an adverb that makes us the service is favorable that Krishna likes, but it's a favorable attitude towards Krishna. And you see that, I mean, when we quote the verse from the Gita, there's this, or even just why we want to please Krishna is because we have a favorable attitude towards him. And he explains this. This is how he makes his case for that. This comes from there's a translation of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that's made by Bhanu Maharaj, and it has the commentaries both of Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So this is from the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on that verse that's originally from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. You can follow. He says the definition of anukulya as pleasing for Krishna, he says, is both too extensive and too limiting. He says, for instance, he says the action of a demon attacking Krishna is the rasa of fighting. From Krishna's perspective, it is pleasing for him since he takes pleasure in fighting with them. So here's an action, a service. They're actually performing a service for Krishna that Krishna likes. Okay. When the demons come and fight with Krishna in Vrindavan, right, it makes the pastimes sweeter. Right, he and his cowherd friends, like a lot of times children will imagine that they're whatever knights, or they're fighting dragons or fighting demons, and here the real demons come, so it makes it so much better. So Krishna is really pleased by that. Some of them actually have come. Some of the major ones have come actually from the spiritual world because Krishna likes to fight, and so they've come, and so but when they're in the mood of fighting, they don't have a favorable attitude towards Krishna, so they're pleasing him, right? But that's not their intention, and they would prefer to kill him. Okay, so it doesn't fit. So it's favorable service, right? Because it pleases Krishna. It means it's something that pleases Krishna, but it can't be considered bhakti because their attitude is wrong. So he says if we say it's just something action that pleases Krishna, then that anukulyena it's too broad. It's too broad because it includes even the demons who may be fighting him. Okay, so in the other way, he says it's too narrow, and he says again an illustration of the definition being too limited. If anukulya means pleasing to Krishna is given, he says, when Yashoda left Krishna and went to take the milk off the fire, Krishna was not pleased. Right, there was the Damodar Leela, where his mother was churning butter. And Krishna came up and was hungry, and so she was breastfeeding him. But then she had milk on the stove; it was boiling over. She put him down and went to attend to the milk. Well, that didn't please Krishna. He was hungry, and then it got worse. Things got worse. And here, this comes from this is from the Krishna Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada's summary of the 10th canto, chapter 9, and it says here: the great reservoir of pleasure, Lord Sri Krishna, thus thought to himself, Mother Yashoda, first of all, left without feeding me sufficient milk, and therefore I broke the pot of yogurt and distributed the stock of butter in charity to the monkeys. Now she has bound me up to a wooden mortar, so I shall do something more mischievous than before. So he's not pleased by that. It's not a pleasing activity. He wanted to be fed, And then he didn't want to be tied up. He resisted her, for some time. That was not his idea, to be tied up to a mortar. So it doesn't fit that definition of an action that's pleasing to Krishna. But then Prabhupada explains here in the purport, it's from Bhagavad 10:9-12. Says, Mother Yashoda wanted to bind Krishna not in order to chastise him, but because she thought that the child was so restless that he might leave the house in fear. That would be another disturbance. Therefore, because of full affection, to stop Krishna from leaving the house, she wanted to bind him with a rope. So she wasn't punishing him because she was angry, but she was wanting to protect him. And it was out of affection that she did it. And so that caused Krishna to accept it as service, even though it wasn't what he wanted. Okay, so that there are cases. And well, here Prabhupada says again. He says, Krishna wants only loving service and nothing more. Krishna accepts even, this is from the purport of the verse we first quoted. Krishna wants only loving service and nothing more. Krishna accepts even a little flower from his pure devotee. He does not want any kind of offering from a non-devotee. He is not in need of anything from anyone because he is self-sufficient, and yet he accepts the offering of his devotee in exchange of love and affection. Okay. So if we look at those cases, we can see how this anukulyena is really, really, really important. Because if you don't have it, if there's not that favorable feeling towards Krishna and some affection for him, then even the best offerings, it says, right, that he doesn't want anything from the non-devotees. So even if it's something really, really important or something really great that they give him, that isn't happening. Or even even if they please him with great service, like the demons were doing, that doesn't rate with Krishna. It's not bhakti. But if you have that, even humble offerings like the leaf, flower, water, these things are accepted by Krishna. And it says in rare cases, this is not something we should take shelter of. Even inappropriate service is happily accepted. There's another case of the wife of Vidura, who was Arjuna's uncle, and she was trying to feed Krishna bananas, and she had such affection that she was kind of bewildered, and so she was peeling the bananas, throwing the bananas away, and handing Krishna the skins. Again, not what Krishna had more the banana in mind, but because she was doing it so lovingly, he happily ate the skins. So this is not something that we can want to take advantage of and say, oh, I love Krishna, so I can give him whatever I want. This is in the case where there's extreme anukulyena, extreme even love for Krishna. So that's what really rates for him. And so even if the service isn't proper, he accepts it. So this anukulyena is very, very important in our service. It's not just the doing of the service, but the inner feeling there has some real importance in what we call devotional service in bhakti. And just we can understand this just from our everyday experience. The more favorable our attitude towards Krishna or anybody, right, will cause our enthusiasm to do something for that person, to increase. Right? If we really, feel some affection for somebody, we're motivated to do something. And if not, this is not a stronger motivation. So if we have this, increased anukulyena, then our service flows, much more enthusiastically. And last time I tried to say that the things we discuss, I want to try to relate back to the offenses to the holy name. I want to kind of connect it with our core philosophy. And so, actually, let's go here first. That this comes. This little diagram is based on the nectar of instruction. There's a verse where it says there are 6 things favorable for Krishna's service, and 3 of these qualities, if I was taking the things from the purport, it seemed to me they go together, they're connected. And so there's confidence, enthusiasm, and patience. And from the purport, Prabhupada says that that if we take up the path of Krishna consciousness, ultimate success is guaranteed because of how Krishna is so anxious to help us. Right, so it's something that can happen. Then he says, Krishna consciousness is the supreme perfection of human life, and nothing else has enduring value. So it's the most valuable thing that can be had, and Krishna will help us in that way. So when you have something extremely valuable and that's doable, that automatically triggers a certain enthusiasm for it. Right? If you have something valuable that you can attain, no enthusiasm. If you have something that's not worthwhile and you can attain, nothing. But when the two things are together, then automatically, oh, that's interesting. Okay? And last time we talked about when people take up the process of devotional service and they hit the stage of unsteady practice, that one of the first stages is this hyper enthusiasm that comes in, and then that tends to waver because the feeling is that somebody is advancing so quickly that they're almost reaching the destination, so they're going to go back to Godhead in no time at all, and they really underestimate the struggles ahead, and so they have this hyper enthusiasm, utsaha mai, right? But here, if you have this notion of how valuable the thing is that we can achieve, it's worth waiting for, right? And so therefore this type of confidence or faith produces an enthusiasm that's kind of grounded with a patience, which is what we really want. So if we have this enthusiasm in Krishna consciousness, we can have something that's not hyper. It's not a hyper enthusiasm that's just going to go away, but it's something that is sustainable. And then here we go back to this is the offense of being inattentive while chanting. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says there's 3 types of this inattention: sleepiness, distraction, and then a lack of enthusiasm. And the root really is this lack of enthusiasm, right? Because if we are hearing something about a topic that really interests us, whatever our really powerful interest we have, you can wake us up from a sleep and we'll be like, oh boy, ready to hear that. Sleepiness isn't the problem. We'll wake right up. And the same thing, distraction, you have no trouble paying attention to something you're really interested in. Right? Something you're really enthusiastic about. A sports fan, and the big game is there. They want to hear what the score is. No problem. They don't have to figure out how they can control their minds or perk up. It happens automatically. So when the distraction or sleepiness is present, it's a sign that there's not real enthusiasm there. And it says even when sleepiness and distraction aren't there, then sometimes you can still have this lack of enthusiasm. So there's not a real zest to it. So that's the underlying problem, really, of the different types of inattention is the real enthusiasm for it. And so if our anukuliyena, our good feeling towards Krishna, right, is accentuated and attended to, our enthusiasm for all types of service will increase. And it automatically will help to deal with all 3 different types of inattention. Okay. So that's why we're looking at this. Now, the interesting thing is that the anukuliyena is not the only internal aspect of service described in Rupa Goswami's definition. There's actually 2 more. Almost everything in the verse is internal, and only the Krishanushilanam is external. So let's look at it again. Let's bring that verse back. So the anukuliyena, okay, that's internal. Krishanushilanam is external. Then we have anyabhilasha shunyam. This is the motivation. Okay. The second one is it looks like it's visible through action. It says jnana, karma, and such other things, any type of other spiritual processes. So it says that bhakti this first class bhakti, as Prabhupada calls it, it isn't obstructed by jnana, karma, or any other kind of spiritual thing. That somebody who is practicing the best bhakti has only one spiritual process, and that's bhakti. And so that's you can see that from the outside, whether or not they do, but it's based upon faith, which we'll see, which is an internal thing. So motivation and faith are these first two lines. These are internal things. So let's look at each one in turn. And so this is the word-for-word translation of the Anya Bilashta Shunyam. And then again, the bold things are mine. And Prabhupada says, without desires other than those for the service of Lord Krishna, comma, or without material desires. And then parentheses, he says, such as those for meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, and addiction to intoxicants. Okay, so the one in bold, that's the core meaning of without any other motivation. Anyabilashita, without a different motivation, free from another motivation, besides serving Krishna. And so if you ask people or say, okay, why are you serving Krishna? Well, I just want to please Krishna. That's what we're supposed to say, because that's what that means. So it means that you want to do something pleasing you have a favorable attitude towards Krishna. You want to do something that pleases him. And the only reason you want to do it is because you want to please him. It means you really have this overwhelming anukulya desire for him. You don't want anything from it. You just want to do that. What I'll tell you, and this I think is implied by the rest of Prabhupada's translation of the word for word, is that is not doable for somebody at the stage of sadhana bhakti. That in fact, if you listen to Prabhupada's and you see Prabhupada's, he has a purport to Jaya Radha Madhava. It's recorded in one of the vintage CDs, and so he sings Jaya Radha Madhava. Then he gives it a short little purport on it, and he mentions, and this is corroborated. He's following Jiva Goswami, who comments this in his commentary to the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And he says the only devotees who strictly follow this first thing, they have no other motivation than pleasing Krishna, are the residents of Vrindavan in the spiritual world. Because he says everybody else at least knows that Krishna is God. And when you know that Krishna is God, you feel like you need to do that. There's some motivation because he's God, you must do it. Where it's pure affection for the residents of Vrindavan. And so as long as, and so we don't have that level of affection. It's not possible for us at the stage of practice. And so that's where Prabhupada goes, comma, or without material desires. And see, and you'll see that many times Prabhupada will talk to us about going back to Godhead. And it's understood we'll be serving Krishna there, but that how much better the spiritual world is, upgrade your existence, And so that's doesn't really fit this first part of the definition. We're trying to get something out of it. We're trying to upgrade our existence. It's a selfish desire. But it's reasonable for us. If we're supposed to have faith that this pure service is possible and desirable, but we're not able to get it yet. And so we can upgrade our desires a little bit. Right? And then he reduced a little bit more. He says meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, and intoxicants. So basically, as long as we have the false ego, we have a certain level of selfishness that has to be dealt with. And we will not come to this point unless we're, at least in the stage of Bhava Bhakti, in the mood of Vrindavan. So we have other motivations. And we should know that. And we shouldn't be ashamed of it, but we should know what they are. And then the jnana karma dhyanavartam, like I said, this is he says, by the knowledge of the philosophy of the monists, mayavadis, by the fruit of activities, by artificially practicing detachment, by the mechanical practice of yoga, by studying this Sankhya philosophy, and so on. Adi means like and so on, etc. This comes down to faith, right? That devotional service is self-sufficient. And so in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 2262, Lord Chaitanya defines it. He says, Shraddha is confident, firm faith that by rendering transcendental loving service to Krishna, one automatically performs all subsidiary activities. Such faith is favorable to the discharge of devotional service. And then Prabhupada, in the purport to that same thing, he goes into a little more detail. He says, firm faith and confidence are called Shraddha. When one engages in the Lord's devotional service, he is to be understood to have performed all his responsibilities in the material world. He has satisfied his forefathers, ordinary living entities, and demigods, and is free from all responsibility. Such a person does not need to meet his responsibility separately. It is automatically done. Fruit of activity, karma, is meant to satisfy the senses of the conditioned soul. However, when one awakens to Krishna consciousness, he does not have to work separately for pious activity. The best achievement of all fruit of activity is detachment from material life, and this detachment is spontaneously enjoyed by the devotee firmly engaged in the Lord's service. And then a similar thing is said by Krishna in the famous 1866 in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Bhaja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayashyami Ma Shuchaha. Abandon all the different dharmas and just take shelter of me, surrender to me, take shelter of me. You don't have to worry about anything. So the bhakti is upgraded the greater faith we have, and it's upgraded by the fewer other motivations we have. And the motivations will decrease, and the faith will increase, and the more we have affection for Krishna, and the fewer motivations we have, and the more faith we have, the more we will feel affectionate towards Krishna. Right? So here's this is verse from the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, Adikanda, chapter 8, verses 117 and 118. And so little Nimai, Lord Chaitanya, he would say, "Oh mother," this is his father had passed away, and so his mother was alone, was a widow with this young child, and so seemingly kind of vulnerable. And he would say, "Oh mother, don't be aggrieved. As long as I am with you, you have everything. I will readily bring you that which people consider rare for even Brahma and Shiva." Right? So this is, Krishna takes care of it. You don't need to worry about anything. And so then if you have faith like that, this increases the anukulya. So these other internal things also relate to that core one, that good feeling towards Krishna, the devotion, the love that we feel towards him. So my question is this is so important, all these three different things. If I ask you, or if I ask myself, what is my motivation for serving Krishna? Am I monitoring that very carefully? Am I seeing when it either upgrades or downgrades? Am I aware of the things that are there? Do we ask each other? We oftentimes ask how we're doing, right? And how are our rounds, or how kind of service that we're doing, or what's going on. How often do we ask people, what is your anukulya? How are you feeling towards Krishna? We tend not to do that so much, I think. And then what's the status of my faith? We obviously have some of these things, or we wouldn't be doing devotional service. But are we monitoring that? Are we seeing if we can upgrade it, or are we noticing if maybe things are happening that are inhibiting that? And I don't think we do so much. These things that we're doing on a regular basis, I think we have a tendency to focus a lot more on either the activities themselves, or the service activities ourselves, the various types of devotional services, and then also knowledge. So we're engaging a lot the head and the and the body. So we have, we're gaining knowledge, and we're spending a lot of time understanding different concepts and being able to explain this. Somebody can ask a question, you can explain this part of the philosophy and that part of the philosophy. But these things come from a deeper level. Our faith doesn't come just from the head, but it comes deeper down. So to properly connect with these vital internal components of bhakti, I'm suggesting we need to be a bit more contemplative than we do now and go deeper than just the mental, surface mental stuff, because we have other faculties to use that are more appropriate for these things. Actually, faith and all these things reside at a deeper level. Okay, that's what I'm going to think about here. And so here, and it maybe sounds a little unusual, but here I'm going to show you the Srimad Bhagavatam 2.7.18 purport, where Prabhupada talks about something. He mentions other places too. He says, the civilized man of sense gratification is on an equal level with animals because animals cannot go beyond the activities of the senses. Above the senses is the mind. A civilization of mental speculation is also not the perfect stage of life because above the mind is the intelligence, buddhi, is what he means here. The Bhagavad Gita here says primarily deals with the intelligence of man, leading one to the progressive path of civilization of the spirit's soul. So when he's talking intelligence here, he's using it's the word buddhi, which there isn't a good English translation for. So it's not like your IQ intelligence. This is a faculty of deep understanding. And then he goes on, he says, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the complete human civilization dealing with the subject matter of the soul proper. So in reading Bhagavad Gita or all the other spiritual literatures, we're supposed to be absorbing it at a deep level. The level of buddhi is the power of comprehension and deep understanding. Right? And it's actually supposed to change the way you see things. It becomes assimilated. It's not just sitting up here, but it's going here, to the heart. And the reason we say the heart is like even in let me jump ahead a little bit. Because so what I'm going to say is how much we know isn't nearly as important as what we have truly taken to heart. We even have this thing in English, this word of taking things to heart, right? Which I've seen is defined as to take something seriously, to internalize or live according to something. Right? We understand the heart region is where the intelligence is. It's also where the super soul is. And so it's a separate faculty from the mind. It's where things are really digested in a very powerful way. And the other one says to feel keenly, be greatly aggrieved at, be much affected by something. So really heartfelt. So we're really it says that the Bhagavad Gita is supposed to change the way we experience the world, reprogram our deep ability to perceive and understand. It's not supposed to just be understood up here, but it's supposed to transform you. That's what Prabhupada simply says. It's the culture of the intelligence. And the Bhagavatam is actually supposed to awaken the soul. And then Prabhupada mentions in the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.44 purport, Shukadeva Goswami presented the Bhagavatam as he heard it from his great father. And so also Sutta Goswami is presenting Bhagavatam as he had heard it from Shukadeva Goswami. Simply hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. The word Navishta means that Sutta Goswami drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. Right? So he's implying that this rapt attention, right, there's something greater than just trying to understand the concepts at the mental level. And actually, Prabhupada is saying that the Bhagavatam, if heard properly, if we're open to hearing with all of our faculties, begins to awaken the soul. It's culture of the soul proper. It will resonate so deeply within us. So if we're just trying to understand the concepts and connect them with other concepts, this is useful, to do that. But if that's all we're doing, if we're not really opening ourselves to take it all the way in, so much of what's supposed to be happening just isn't happening. The Bhagavatam doesn't, in one sense, doesn't happen the way it should. And the Gita doesn't happen the way it should if we're not focusing on it. It's like, when we think deeply of something very thoughtful, our attention actually goes, to the heart area. So up in the look up and we look in the top of the head, where just the mind is going. And that's where the real transformation takes place. So to me, how much we know, it isn't nearly as important as what we've truly taken to heart. That's where the transformation takes place. That's where the assimilation takes place. That's where we're growing from the knowledge that we've got. Is how much have we really digested? Okay. Now this is an interesting purport here. You might think, okay, well, is that something Prabhupada says we should do? This is a really interesting purport. It's kind of a long one. It's actually only a small section of this very long purport, but it's Srimad Bhagavatam 2.2.35 purport. And Prabhupada talks about using this kind of deeper contemplation to understand something. He says, the presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize, even for the common man. He says, the procedure is as follows. This is fascinating here. He says, one can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. He may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. So this is not just a brain exercise. You're trying to feel it. So it's like when you really deeply are thoughtful about something, it's coming down to the heart level. That's why he says intelligence. So your power of comprehension. So you're really trying to understand something. It slows the mind down, and you're really trying. And you're trying to feel it. You can feel that you exist. He can feel that he is not the body. He can feel that the hand, the leg, the head, the hair, and the limbs are all his bodily parts and parcels. But as such, the hand, the leg, the head, etc., cannot be identified with themselves. This is like a little a contemplative exercise. And you slowly try to see that, feel that, understand it by experience that in some way, right? It's an interesting thing what he's doing. Then he goes further. He says, therefore, just by using intelligence, he can distinguish and separate himself from other things that he sees. So the natural conclusion is that the living being, either man or beast, is the seer, and he sees besides himself all other beings. So there is a difference between the seer and the seen. Now, by a little use of intelligence, again, it's not your brain, not the mind, but your kind of deeper perception. The intelligence is where the super soul speaks to us. Prabhupada says that the intelligence, the buddhi, is the form direction of the super soul. So it's where the inner voice speaks. Right? So when we really contemplate something deeply, so we really feel it here in the heart. And you feel stuff with it. It's where the emotions are around it. If you think back and remember a really fond memory, usually it's you're using that part of yourself. It says, now by a little use of intelligence, we can also readily agree that the living being who sees the things beyond himself by ordinary vision has no power to see or move independently. All our ordinary actions and perceptions depend on various forms of energy supplied to us by nature in various combinations. So it's not enough to hear this, but you have to try to digest it. And he goes on, anyway, he continues along in this way. So we don't have to go through the whole thing. I think you get the idea. He has this really internal, deep contemplation that we're supposed to use the function of buddhi for, and we can actually understand really basic things of our philosophy that we know, we know intellectually in the head, but we can begin to realize them directly and have it change us. So I'm going to make a few statements here. If we don't connect with the heart, and I'll tell you what, the buddhi, the intelligence, it's one of the innate faculties that we have. that we've been given, by Krishna. I mean, it's part of our subtle body. It's not our eternal self. It's not our soul. But Krishna gave us, these faculties, physical body and the subtle body and all the things that they have. And it's a well-designed thing. And if the intelligence, if the buddhi isn't activated, it should be working, then the whole system isn't functioning very well. When we're aware of buddhi, we're aware of the heart part. We're thinking in there, we're getting inspiration from the super soul. It acts like a ballast for the mind. It slows it down. I think they talk back and forth. The emotions come out. When we understand something, there's certain emotions come around it, and they balance the emotions. Emotions are also part of our system for understanding what's going on. They're like another sense. When you take out if the intelligence isn't functioning very well, if we're not paying attention to that, using that one, the mind really goes quickly. There's no ballast for it. So it's really quick. It moves this way, that way, and it causes all these emotional responses that also aren't balanced. So the buddhi can slow it down. We slow it down. Slow down the mind, evaluate the quality of the thoughts and ideas, it evaluates the meaning of the emotions it receives. It deals with our deepest understandings and gets guidance from the super soul. It's a really powerful part of our it's our material existence, but it really helps us function so much better. And Prabhupada says the Gita is meant to actually program that in a beautiful way. So if we don't connect with the heart, the intelligence, many wonderful things we know about Krishna won't be able to produce deep feelings of devotion towards Krishna. You see these things, you hear people even do it, and everybody says, "Wow, there was a great kirtan last week," or there was, it was a great festival, or we heard a great lecture, or this and that happened that was so wonderful. The deities were so beautiful today, and so if all these wonderful things keep happening, why doesn't our devotion towards Krishna increase in that? It comes and it goes. Right? We have all these wonderful experiences we can remember that we've had in Krishna consciousness. I mean, Sam was telling me that the kirtan he was experiencing at Navami was be off the charts. So that should it tends to kind of go by. We have all these wonderful experiences, but they kind of go by, and we wait for the next one. Because if we keep it kind of at just an emotional or mental level, we're not integrating it back into our faith. We're not integrating it back into our checking against what's motivating our service, and it's not integrating with our good feeling towards Krishna. When if we don't have the intelligence happening and doing it, then we can't upgrade all these things. We can't adjust them when things happen. So we go through all these wonderful experiences, but somehow it happens and it's nice, but then nothing. So these things happen at a deeper internal level. That's where we connect with. So if we don't connect with the heart, that's what I was saying. The wonderful experience won't transform us. The same things won't give us more deeper connection with Krishna. And then what about our ability to connect? One of the most powerful processes in devotional service is sadhu sangha, right? And so if we're not able to deeply connect with ourselves, and others aren't deeply connecting with themselves, how can we deeply connect with one another? The Quakers, they have this really interesting thing where for their services, traditionally, some of them are different now, but they would just sit in a circle and they would try to connect with Super Soul, the inner voice of God. And they would open and they would just be quiet and be looking there at their intelligence, looking in the heart. And when somebody would feel motivated to say something, they said they were supposed to say it. It was a sin not to say it. And if you didn't feel that kind of real inner movement to say something, you should stay silent. And so there was really deep reflection and deep sharing there. That was really it's kind of interesting. They became really deeply connected to one another. But I think if we are able to live a little bit more in the intelligence, in the heart, and feel that inner guidance, it mitigates the raging emotions. It mitigates the racing mind. It allows us to integrate our experiences in Krishna consciousness. It allows us to be aware when things are changing. Why is my enthusiasm growing up? Why is it lacking? What if I have a challenge in Krishna consciousness? Right. Part of what happens in moving from Anushtita sadhana bhakti to steady devotional service, right, is we learn to be tolerant. And so Krishna, sometimes he puts things in our path that are difficult for us. And that can make us question our faith. And it's asking us to open our heart even further. But if we're not even aware of what's happening in that way, our faith may be damaged and we don't even know it, we don't see it happening, and we just lose enthusiasm. When we lose things that we have attachments to, when there's grief, that shows us what the attachments were, right? And we can understand that, and we can feel that grief, and we can release it. But otherwise, we may think, oh, again, we suppress it, and then it affects our faith, or affects our enthusiasm, but we're not aware of what's happening there behind the scenes, because we're only thinking at the top of the head and in the body. So I really think we have to become. I mean, it's not all things are supposed to be functioning together. The mind and the intelligence, and all these different things are supposed to be functioning. The emotions and balancing each other out. But I think we have a lack of looking, into the deeper heart level, and we would benefit so greatly if we did that. It would deepen our experience. It would do so many things. I think that's all. Well, yeah, that's it again. We can't if we don't connect with the heart, we don't have the means to upgrade, and troubleshoot our anukulena. We already covered that. All right, so yeah, I guess I'm kind of past the time we want to be. I see there's some questions in the chat. Let me stop to share here. And let's take a look here. I want to answer questions at the end. Okay. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, the buddhi is in the heart, right? So bhakti encompasses everything, right? We engage everything. And it says bhakti, emotional and intellectual. Bhakti is in the heart, is our intellect in our heart. It's our buddhi, intelligence. So what we usually call intellect is like usually up here, our how our mind works. But yeah, the buddhi, the way that really where we have deep understanding, that's in the heart. That's where we go there. It's there, and that's where the super soul connects with us. So we'll feel, actually, when we deeply contemplate, we feel the heart. We feel it down here. We start thinking down here instead of up here. So bhakti uses everything, right? It actually uses everything. But a lot of where our emotions for Krishna or feelings for Krishna are processed through that. All these things are integrated and processed together. The buddhi integrates our ideas, integrates our emotions, integrates our understandings. It's like the big integrator. Integrates the inspiration we get from Krishna. It's like this big central thing that cools, that balances everything, connects everything. And that's to me, that's where so much of the transformation is going to get done. And so if we're just on the physical side or just on the top of the head, it just changes. With the mind changes, the mind changes, the mind changes. We understand everything, but it's not sinking in. It's not being assimilated. It's not changing us. It may inspire us. Oh, this is a great thought. This is great. But then it just kind of goes away there. So, the dhyana yoga is a different practice. It has this dhyana yoga after bhakti is right. Dhyana yoga is a completely different practice. Dhyana yoga means you withdraw your attention from everything, and then you can focus on the soul and the super soul. Bhakti is a totally different process. And bhakti is self-sufficient. So then there's no process after that. It's a different separate process. All right, so I think that's what's in the chat. And so Other questions from the rest of you? Questions, comments, complaints, doubts? I'm speaking things we don't usually talk about, so maybe I'm mad, and maybe I am. You can tell me so. I only cry a little bit.
Prabhu, I wanted to help me get, I want to try to explain something or ask a question about something. Forgive me if I'm not getting it out. It's like when one comes to Krishna totally, or thinks they are fully devoted and surrendered to Krishna, you still take your, it's like you still take yourself with you. I mean, it's not like the karma or everything that, you know, your mission in life, or whatever it is that you need to get out of in Maya is gone. It's still there, and in some form or another. And I found myself, like, say, for example, 20 years ago, I thought, oh, I'm done with this thing. I'm done with envy or whatever, make it up. And then, you know, over the years, it's gone. And I get to come to Krishna. I'm just going to focus on surrendering to Krishna and Bhakti. And all of a sudden, that thing is like Joseph with a coat of many colors. It starts showing up again. You know, in my service or whatever it is, and it just takes me by total surprise. And I just finally said to Krishna, is this your way of saying that over the years, yeah, you gave it up a little bit. Yeah, you gave it up a little bit. But now you're mine, and I'm going to show you what it's like to really give it up. I mean, you know, we're going to work on it and work on it and work on it. And it's going to, you know, we're going to get it gone. And I'm saying that from my point, because I do find that I'm surprised by it. And I find I don't want it to interfere with my service, but those feelings of like working through something that I thought I'd long ago let go of just take me by surprise.
We shouldn't be surprised. We actually shouldn't be surprised. Oftentimes we feel a change when we take the devotional service that's quite real and oftentimes quite profound. But we underestimate the levels and the different degrees of subtlety that our attachments, you know, to our ego and to this world are there. We don't realize how many they are, how subtle they are, how manifold they are. And so the process of bhakti is Krishna will, especially if we're a little aware and introspective, Krishna will demonstrate to you where they are and where they still are. And so we shouldn't be shocked, we shouldn't be discouraged, but we should then, you know, pray to Krishna to help us with that and try to work through it as best we can. Because the practice of sadhana bhakti really is removing the false ego, which is the most subtle material element. And so it's not that easy. And so that's why we have to have the patience along with the enthusiasm.
Thank you.
Forgive ourselves for these things because they're natural, but we do want to be rid of them.
Okay.
Anything more?
Yeah, this is really important. What you're doing, Gary Govardhan, I really appreciate you putting this together, because it's a very basic understanding. And without that, as Prabhupada would say, you're missing the point. And we don't want to miss the point, you know. So there's the principle and the detail. And so a lot of times devotees get caught up in the day-to-day details. And then they think that's good enough. But yeah, we're all, you know, trying to transform our lives, our hearts. We're trying to re-educate the subtle body to understand things properly. And you know, I really liked, you know, the I'm not my eyes, I'm not my nose, I'm not, that used to be a Sunday feast lecture.
Yeah.
You know, that was I really like that. And that's what I made a children's book out of that. I liked it so much, but to feel, you know, to understand, to come to some understanding that, you know, if you're talking to a Christian, we're not a body that has a soul. We're a soul that has a body.
Hmm.
So that's the turning point for me. That's what brought me on to Krishna consciousness. That drew me in. And also the devotees, they have this idea of, it comes from the early days, you know, where people joined temples and they just gave up everything and, you know, they just followed the program. They didn't realize that because they were in a group, they were doing the same things. A lot of the strength for what they were doing, getting up early, taking a cold shower, chanting rounds, doing whatever service came to you, was because you're acting in a group. But if you become isolated from that situation, Prabhupada used to call the temples oases, right? So you got strength from the group to do these things, to go against what's going on outside the doors of the temple, which is, you know, everybody breaking the regs. Nobody's really trying to, I mean, there are people that are devotional, but we had so much more understanding of things. But the idea of fast tracking came from the early days. And I remember I was in the military, we had an obstacle course. And if you were smart, you would pace yourself. You wouldn't, a lot of us didn't know that. And we just went full bore right at the front end. But it takes you about 35, 45 minutes to get through the obstacle course. And at the end, there's a water hazard with a Tarzan swing. And the sergeants were taking bets how many of us would get wet. And some of us were just exhausted at that point. And we didn't make it over the last water hazard. And so, yeah, pace yourself. This is not something that happens in a day, in a week, in a year. You know, we're in this for the long haul. It takes, I mean, generally this takes lifetimes, not to say that you can't be done, but you have to become very serious to finish this in one life. But as you were saying, the value of this is so much that it's, I mean, I can't imagine my life without Prabhupada, Krishna consciousness, Srimad Bhagavatam. I can't even imagine a life without those things at this point.
So there's a message that Nitya Kishore Mataji shared with everybody. I have, there's optional homework for this week. Nothing has to be turned in or checked, but what she mentioned there, she says, I really like the 3 questions to contemplate on. For sure will motivate me to think deeper this week and trying to find the answers. So the 3 things, right? What is our faith? What is our motivation? And what is our feeling towards Krishna? How do we really feel towards Krishna? Because it has to be genuine. Our connection with Krishna has to be authentic. And that's why it's important that we have that connection. So yeah, so if you desire, and no one's going to check the homework or correct it or ask for it, but it's just an optional thing. If you would think about those things, what is your faith and the basis of it? What is your motivation, and what is your
desire,
and how strong is your
it's
desire?
all based on desire.
Yeah,
right.
Anukuli in it. Yeah, so yeah, so see what happens to you if you give yourself some space to really think about those things. Why do you serve Krishna?
Right.
Oh, kind of at the top of the hour. Is there anything more before we go? The one last shot. Otherwise, really thank you all for keeping me company here this evening. All right. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
See you in the morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, I have one question if you have time.
Sure.
I am new to Krishna consciousness, not new to Krishna, but but when I chant, it's a new thing for me, chanting 16 rounds. And so when I go to the 10th round, and I have to get up early because I go to work early. So
Mhm.
it's really early because it takes hour and a half to 2 hours, So
Mhm.
I do feel sleepy after the 10th round, and I try really hard, but I have to walk and finish my chanting. I can't sit and chant. Then I will be chanting, but I will not be chanting. Like I will be chanting, but my mind is not in chanting.
Right.
So
Yeah.
do you have any suggestions, Prabhuji?
I mean, the walking is fine. Prabhupada used to walk sometimes when he would chant. So yeah, if that's you need to do that. Yeah.
But does that mean that I am not attentive to Krishna? I don't like
No,
that feeling that
yeah.
I'm
I mean,
ignoring him. Like,
no, I mean, I guess you can be the judge. I mean, I guess one thing is attentive, especially now since you're new and you haven't made any promises to chant a certain amount. Maybe you want to mitigate that. Maybe you want to chant a number that you can really do nicely. Given your situation. Because the quality is more important than the number.
mhm.
So you can consider that if that would help you to chant, a couple of rounds less or something and be able to do it really nicely. Otherwise, you can walk. It's okay.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
All right. Okay. End the meeting for all here. Hare Krishna, everybody.